Imagine being wedged upside down in total darkness. No light, no room to turn your head. Rock pressing against your ribs so tightly you can barely expand your lungs. You try to inhale, but the air feels thinner each time your arms are pinned. Your legs are trapped above you, and gravity is no longer neutral. On November 24, 2009, 26-year-old John Edward Jones entered Nutty Putty Cave in Utah with family members during Thanksgiving week. He expected a short adventure. He never came back out. John wasn't reckless. He was a medical student in Virginia, home visiting family for the holidays. He was married. He had a young daughter. Friends described him as calm, intelligent, steady under pressure. Caving had been part of his life growing up in Utah. Nutty Putty Cave was well known among locals. Discovered in 1960, the cave became popular for its tight, twisting passages formed by hydrothermal activity. Unlike massive caverns with high ceilings, Nutty Putty was a maze of narrow tunnels, squeezes, and vertical drops. Some passages had intimidating names: the Scout Eater, the Birth Canal. But over the decades, thousands of people had explored it. It felt adventurous, challenging but survivable. That night, John entered the cave with his brother Josh and several others. They moved through the familiar sections, crawling and sliding through tight corridors. At some point, John and Josh went ahead to explore a narrow passage they believed was the Birth Canal, a steep chute that required sliding down head first before climbing back up. But inside, Nutty Putty passages could look deceptively similar. John made a wrong turn. Instead of entering the known Birth Canal, he crawled into an unmapped fissure, a crack in the limestone that narrowed as it descended. He slid forward headfirst. At first, it seemed manageable. Then the passage constricted. The walls pressed tighter against his chest and hips. He tried to exhale and wiggle backward. That technique often works in tight squeezes. Breathe out, reduce your chest size, shimmy back. But this space didn't widen behind him. It narrowed. John continued sliding downward until he became wedged upside down at roughly a 70-degree angle. The space at its tightest point was estimated to be about 18 inches wide and around 10 inches high. There was no room to turn around, no room to raise his arms above his head, no way to generate leverage. Below him, the fissure narrowed even further, becoming completely impassable. Above him, gravity pulled his entire body weight downward into the crack. When Josh found him, John was calm. "I'm stuck," he reportedly said. At first, they thought they could free him themselves, but minutes passed, then more. John's body began reacting to the inversion. When a person hangs upside down for extended periods, blood rushes toward the head. The heart must work harder to circulate blood against gravity. Pressure builds in the brain. The lungs struggle to expand as abdominal organs push against the diaphragm. This isn't just discomfort, it's physiologically dangerous. In John's case, he wasn't hanging freely. His chest was compressed by rock. Every breath required effort. As hours passed, carbon dioxide levels in his blood would have been rising. Oxygen levels dropping. Rescue teams were called. Emergency responders arrived and began navigating the tight cave system. Reaching John was difficult. Every rescuer had to crawl through the same narrow passages that had trapped him. More than 100 people would eventually assist in the operation, including experienced cave rescue personnel. When they reached him, John was still conscious, still communicating. They began building an elaborate rope-and-pulley system, anchoring ropes into the cave walls to create mechanical advantage. The plan was to slowly lift him upward inch by inch. The angle made everything more complicated, because John was upside down. Lifting him even slightly could shift his weight unpredictably. After hours of careful work, rescuers managed to raise him several feet. For the first time since becoming trapped, there was real hope. John spoke with rescuers. He asked about his family. At times, he even tried to reassure the people trying to save him. Then disaster struck. One of the natural rock anchors used in the pulley system suddenly failed. The rock fractured under stress. The rope system collapsed. John fell back into the crevice. Witnesses later described the sound, the sudden snap, followed by his body sliding back down into the tight fissure. He became wedged even more firmly than before. After that fall, rescuers were unable to raise him again. The operation continued through the night. Medical personnel understood the growing danger. Prolonged inversion under compression can lead to cardiac arrest. The body simply cannot tolerate that position indefinitely. Rescuers were inches away from his legs and lower torso, but they could not reach around his shoulders to change his position. The space was too tight for another person to squeeze beside him. Time passed slowly underground. 20 hours, 25. John's speech became less frequent, his breathing more strained. Shortly before midnight on November 24th, extending into the early hours of November 25th, after approximately 27 to 28 hours trapped, John Jones went into cardiac arrest. There was no space to perform CPR, no room to reposition him. Inside that narrow fissure of limestone, the rescue team had reached the limits of physics and human capability. After his death, officials faced another agonizing decision. Recovering John's body would require placing rescuers into the same unstable, constricted space. The failed anchor had already demonstrated how unpredictable the cave walls could be. Engineers and state authorities evaluated the risk. Ultimately, in agreement with John's family, it was decided that attempting recovery would endanger more lives. John would remain where he was. Nutty Putty Cave would become his final resting place. In the days that followed, the entrance to the cave was permanently sealed. Explosives were used to collapse sections of the passage. Concrete was poured to prevent further access. The once popular local adventure site was closed forever. Today, the hillside near Utah Lake looks quiet and ordinary. There is no visible sign of what happened deep inside, but beneath the mountain, in a narrow, unmapped crack, John Jones remains. Nutty Putty had previously been closed due to safety concerns and later reopened with permit systems. After 2009, the closure became permanent. Across the calving community, the incident became a sobering reminder. Tight, unmapped passages carry extreme risk. Even experienced explorers can misjudge a turn. There is no conspiracy in this story. No disappearance without explanation. Only geology, gravity, and the unforgiving nature of confined spaces. John Jones was a husband, a father, a son, a friend, a future physician who never finished medical school. What began as a Thanksgiving week family outing ended as one of the most harrowing cave rescue attempts in modern American history. And somewhere inside that sealed mountain, in darkness that will never be disturbed again, remains a silent reminder of how small we are when the earth closes in. In the end, the mystery isn't what happened. We know what happened. The true weight of this story is understanding how quickly adventure can turn into permanence, and how sometimes even hundreds of rescuers are not enough to overcome the simple force of gravity.